The logical conclusion of that is everyone needs a willing substitute to take on the storm. And when he realized that, when he grasped it, it revolutionized his attitude toward people. He was willing to give himself up to save the sailors. He was willing to die for the dirty pagans. So he says, remember how you were trying to save yourself? This is in response to the sailor's question. Remember how you were trying to save yourselves by throwing all your cargo overboard? Well, I'm the last bit of cargo left. So save yourselves, pick me up, and hurl me into the sea. Then the sea will quiet down for you, for I know it is because of me that this great tempest has come upon you. Now, as I was studying this passage some months ago for the men's Bible study, I found that there were two lines of thought in the commentaries on Jonah's instructions here to the sailors. Jonah is either A, very sacrificial here, giving himself up so that the sailors will be saved, or B, Jonah is being very manipulative of God, saying, are you still going to kill the sailors who did nothing wrong here, all because of me? And if I drown, are you still going to kill them? But look, here's the deal. I am not going to Nineveh. I'd rather die. So I'm going to have them throw me in the water. It's up to you now, God. I'm going to die no matter what. Are you still going to kill them? That's the other perspective. Now, I think that both are partially correct. This is where I come down on this, right? When he says, pick me up and throw me into the sea, is he submitting to God or is he rebelling against God? That's really the question. And that's the discussion in the commentaries. And I think that I come down somewhere in the middle. Because if you look at the rest of what he says, he starts to come to his senses, not because he's looking at God. He's still refusing to do that. But because he's looking at the sailors. Look at what he says. I know it is my fault that this great storm has come upon you. It's like a partial admonition of sin. It probably was only a comment brought about by pity for their situation. But it's remarkable to me based on where he started. He's actually thinking of someone besides himself. This is a first. It may be that he's trying to kill himself. I mean, it probably is, but at least he says, the storm was sent for me. There's no need for these men to get killed in the process. Just throw me in, and let's test to see what God's really going to do. And regardless of the thought process, the end conclusion is, I am willing, Jonah is saying, I am willing to sacrifice myself to save their lives. Jonah is beginning to recognize that New Testament principle of what it is to lose his life for the sake of others. But of course, the sailors reject that. Nobody needs to die, they say. Verse 13, nevertheless, the men rowed hard to get back to dry land, but they could not, for the sea grew more and more tempestuous against them. See, they're scared to death. First, they're scared of the storm. And then they're scared of Jonah and Jonah's God. If this man is sent by God and we kill him, it is going to get so much worse for us. That's a logical conclusion for them to have, which kind of shows us how much further along these pagans are than the Pharisees of the New Testament Gospels, isn't it? They could care less whether or not they kill a man sent by God. But these pagans are not about to kill God's prophet. And so they try to figure out the storm again on their own strength. Maybe the plan was, if we can just get him to shore, we can dump him there. Leave all of our problems on the shore. God won't continue to be mad at us, and we'll save his prophet's life. We'll probably earn some bonus points in the process. But we are definitely not going to participate in him getting any further from God's plan for his life. But it doesn't work. And so they fall back to bargaining. Verse 14, therefore they called out to the Lord, O Lord, let us not perish for this man's life, and lay not on us innocent blood, for you, O Lord, have done as it pleased you. Would you look at that? They start out praying to who knows what. And now they're praying to the sovereign Lord of all creation, which means Jonah's life was still a witness to them, even in rebellion. Isn't it amazing what God can do with your life? Now, I'm not saying go ahead and rebel and God will use you anyway. I'm pretty sure there's a passage that says something about not putting God to the test. But isn't it amazing that God can use even rebellion? And when these pagan sailors finally show some faith, they begin finding peace that comes from the fear of the Lord. So they picked up Jonah and hurled him into the sea, and the sea ceased from its raging. Then the men feared the Lord exceedingly, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows. They throw Jonah into the ocean, and the storm stopped. And then the author says the men feared the Lord exceedingly. Now, wait, hold on, because this tripped my I don't understand meter. Verse 4 and 5, the storm comes and there's fear. Verse 9, there's a kind of a false statement about the fear of God. And verses 10 through 14, the struggle against the storm, and the storm gets bigger, and so there's bigger fear. Verse 15 comes along, there's no storm, and so what would you expect? No fear. But that's not what you find. That's not what it says. It says there was greater fear. They feared exceedingly, more than ever they feared. Why? Well, first of all, these were sailors, and they'd never seen a storm go from raging to suddenly becalmed. They've never seen that before, so that would make you go, oh, what is going on? That would lead to amazement, even if it happened without the circumstances of throwing a body overboard. But to have a body hit the water and suddenly have it to go flat, mirror surfaced, what sort of God is this? Wouldn't that be your response? But I think they're also experiencing what we see in Psalm 130, verse 4. It says, "But with you there is forgiveness, that you may be feared." Now think about that for a second. Why would forgiveness cause fear? It doesn't. See, these sailors have been afraid already, haven't they? They're scared to death just a minute ago. They were just saying in verse 14, we're going to do this. Don't kill us. Don't kill us. And now something new has happened. Now they have an existential grasp of who God is, the greatness of who he is. This is the kind of fear that is a simultaneous wonder and awe and movement of the heart that says, truly, this is the one who is worthy of all the glory and honor and praise that I can muster. That's the kind of fear. See, that's the kind of fear that forgiveness engenders. Truly, this is one worthy of my praise, of my effort, of my life. And what they just witnessed was a sacrifice, basically, out of love. They were trying to save him, and yet Jonah was saying, I may die, but at least I'll save you in the process. And then they found out that this is a God that actually honored that sacrifice. This is a God that accepted a sacrifice of love. This is their appointment, basically, with the revelation of a God who really is, not just some statue on the shelf. And as a result, they began to experience a real fear of God, which is not cowering in a corner and being frightened, but being filled with awe and wonder and respect. It's the fear that casts out all the other fear, because it's amazement at his love, at the substitutionary sacrifice of one for them, which causes them then to promise vows to him. They're convinced. They don't need any more evidence. I don't know if I can make it any more plain to you what Jonah chapter 1 is really all about. God's righteousness will never be found in trusting to your own religion, trusting to your own effort. That's what the sailors were doing at the beginning. Try harder, perform better, get rid of the junk in your life. But God's righteousness can only be found when you stop trusting in your own record, in your own efforts, and your own performance for acceptance. You see, I cannot get rid of fear by constructing higher walls or getting better insurance. See, that's what the sailors were trying to do. I can't get rid of fear like that. I have to know the one who made the entire universe and know the one who loves me so powerfully. I have to know the one who made the ultimate willing sacrifice, who said, I'll die for you so that you might have life. And when you've surrendered your life to Jesus, suddenly there is this inward peace that you just simply can't explain. The storm might still be raging out there, but inside there's a peace. It's different when you know the one who sacrificed himself for you. So this is my prayer for each and every person, not just in this room, but everywhere for all time, that we would all come to know the one who's willing to sacrifice himself for us, that every person, every human being would find him, would choose to worship him in awe and wonder, would know a true fear of who he is and what he's done on our behalf. Because within that there is peace. Within his sacrifice there is hope